You ever wonder what it makes a man tough? I ain't talking about showing off at the gym or yelling louder than the next fella to prove you're strong. I'm talking real toughness, the kind you carry quiet deep down in your bones, the kind that don't flinch when life takes a swing at you, the kind that don't ask for pity and don't need an audience. Truth is, that kind of toughness don't come from easy living. It comes from hard times. From cold mornings when you gotta saddle up before the sun, even though your back's sore and your fingers don't want to move. From days when the wind cuts through your coat and the cows are scattered across frozen hills. From nights when you lay on the ground, belly empty and bones aching, wondering if you're going to make it through. Yeah, hard times made hard men. That's the truth. And the cowboy, he was the proof. See, the cowboy wasn't born in comfort. He was raised in dust and sweat. Out there on the plains, you didn't get to whine. You didn't get to call in sick or ask for a break. You did your job, rain, shine, or rattlesnake bite. That's just how it was. And over time, those hard miles didn't just shape a man's muscles. They shaped his soul. He learned to suffer quiet, to ride through pain, to bury the hurt deep and keep moving forward. Ain't glamorous, ain't pretty, but it's honest and it's strong. These days, folks throw the word tough around like it's cheap. They think it means being rude or mean or puffing out your chest. But toughness ain't loud. It don't need to prove itself. Real toughness, that's the cowboy who gets bucked off, cracks a rib, and climbs back in the saddle before the dust settles. That's the mother who raises 3 kids alone on a ranch, doing the work of 10 men and never asking for praise. That's the old hand who lost everything in the fire and still showed up the next morning to fix fence. It's folks who keep moving when their hearts broke, who stand tall even when they got nothing left but grit and guts. And here's the thing, this kind of strength, it ain't gone. You see it in the rancher patching his own boots 'cause money's tight, in the kid learning to rope from YouTube 'cause his granddad's long gone, in the young woman taking over the family land after her daddy passed and the bank came calling. It's still out there. Just quieter now. That's why we're telling this story. Not 'cause it's some history lesson, but 'cause it's a reminder that what made the cowboy tough is still inside folks today. Buried maybe, forgotten by some, but it's there. And the world? Well, it still needs hard men, hard women too. Folks who don't quit when it gets rough, who don't fold when the wind howls, who look the storm in the eye and say, oh, not today. So if you're feeling beat down, if life's been throwing haymakers at you, if your boots are full of mud and your heart's hanging by a thread, stick around because we're going to talk about what it really means to be tough. We're going to tell the stories of the men who bled for this land, the ones who built their backbone one busted knuckle at a time. We're going to talk about pain, pride, loss, and grit, about what it means to stand tall when the world's trying to break you. And maybe, just maybe, you'll see yourself in some of these stories. Maybe you'll realize you're tougher than you think. So tighten your cinch, settle into the saddle. This ride ain't going to be smooth, but it'll be worth it. 'Cause by the end of it, you'll understand what the old-timers meant when they said, hard times don't build weak men. They carve out the strong ones. Now let's ride. The Dust Bowl. Grit forged in the wind. They say the wind never stopped blowing in those days. Morning started with grit in your teeth and ended with dust in your lungs. Folks didn't wake up wondering if there'd be a storm, but how bad it'd be. Every day was a battle, just to see the sun through the sky of swirling dirt. Back in the 1930s, the Dust Bowl slammed the southern plains like a punch to the gut. Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, those states took it square in the jaw. Farmers watched their topsoil get ripped away like a scab in the wind. What once was rich black dirt turned into lifeless powder, dry as old bones. Families didn't have time to feel sorry for themselves. They patched up what they could and prayed for rain that never came. Men worked dawn to dark with bandanas over their mouths, and women stuffed wet rags in window cracks trying to keep the dust from swallowing their babies in their sleep. School kids walked to class with goggles and scarves, looking like little outlaws. They'd cough their way through spelling words, their lunch boxes half empty. Sometimes the schools shutting down, not because of snow, but because the dust filled the halls like smoke from a fire. But the worst part wasn't the storms. It was the slow, steady hunger. Crops wouldn't grow, livestock choked on dust, and store shelves sat bare. Some folks left, packed everything into a truck, and headed west. But the ones who stayed, they were built different. They weren't just surviving. They were getting tougher by the day. You'd hear stories, boys barely old enough to shave, taking on a man's load to help their mamas. 12-year-olds running trap lines, mending fences, hauling water from miles away. They didn't complain. They didn't have time for it. That kind of hardship didn't break them. It carved character into their bones. The wind carried more than dust. It carried stories of neighbors helping neighbors when both had nothing. Folks would split a can of beans 6 ways just to make sure no one went without. There was honor in suffering together and pride in not asking for more than your share. And the old-timers, they always said, if you could make it through the Dust Bowl, you could make it through anything. The ones who did, those were the hard men and women. Their hands didn't just bear calluses, they bore stories. Pain shaped their souls, but it never soured them. It gave them backbone. That's the kind of toughness that doesn't show up overnight. It ain't made in comfort. It's forged in fire. The Dust Bowl wasn't just a disaster. It was a proving ground. And out of that dry, broken earth, something solid rose up. Something that still echoes in the hearts of folks today. Cowboy work, where the spine gets tested. Long before the cities gleamed and folks forgot how to sweat, the backbone of this country rode horseback and smelled like leather and dust. Cowboy work wasn't just a job, it was a way of life. The kind that started before dawn and didn't end just because the sun dipped down. A cowboy's alarm clock was the sound of a rooster or a restless herd. Breakfast? If he had time, it was black coffee and a dry biscuit, maybe some beans from last night. Then it was out the door, boots crunching frost or mud, depending on the season. There were no sick days, no complaint boxes. A busted rib meant wrap it up and keep riding. A fever just meant you wore more layers and hoped the chills didn't knock you off the saddle. Ranch work didn't care about your feelings. It measured you by how you showed up when it hurt. Cattle don't take holidays, and neither did the cowboys tending them. Calving season meant long, cold nights kneeling in frozen mud, helping bring new life into a world that might kill it. This scummy morning. The joy of saving a calf was always shadowed by the sorrow of losing one. Roping ain't just a trick, it's a survival skill. Every loop thrown was a dance between speed and patience. A cowboy had to read the herd, the horse, the wind, and himself. One bad move could mean a broken arm, or worse, it took guts to get good and even more to stay humble. Branding day was where boys learned to be men. The air thick with smoke and sweat, the sharp scent of burnt hide, the sounds of calves bawling and iron sizzling. It was grueling work, dirty and hot, and nobody got out clean, but everyone pulled their weight no matter how small. There was always something to mend, fences to patch, tack to oil, barns to shore up before a storm. You didn't wait around for a problem to get worse. You fixed it before it got out of hand. Tools were passed down along with the wisdom to use them right. A real cowboy knew the land like the back of his hand. He could smell rain before it came, or read the way cattle moved like a tracker reads tracks. He didn't need GPS, just stars, instincts, and a horse that trusted him. That kind of knowledge didn't come easy. It came from living it, and when the work was done, if it ever was, there was still the code. Respect for the land, kindness to animals, and a strong back for a friend in need. A cowboy's word meant something, and a handshake could close a deal better than any lawyer's pen. Cowboy work carved men from flesh and grit. It didn't offer fame or riches. What it gave was harder to see: discipline, humility, and a fire that couldn't be put out by hardship. You didn't ride to prove something. You rode because it was right, because that's just what real cowboys do. Warfront grit. Cowboys in combat boots. When the call came, the Cowboys didn't flinch. World War I, then again in World War II, ranch hands traded in spurs for boots and saddles for rifles. They didn't go because they wanted medals. They went because duty rode higher than fear. These weren't boys raised in comfort. They were hardened by drought, by cattle drives, by loss. They already knew what it meant to dig deep, to stand firm. So when the trenches called, they brought with them a quiet toughness the city boys hadn't seen. Cowboys made damn fine soldiers. They knew how to ride, how to shoot, and more importantly, how to work as a team without whining, whether it was storming a beach or riding a tank through Europe. They moved with that same cowboy grit they learned back home. Letters home didn't talk about fear. They talked about the land, the horses, the smell of sage in the air. Even overseas, the cowboy heart stayed rooted in open skies. That memory of wide plains and quiet mornings kept many men steady when the world around them fell apart. When the bullets stopped flying, those who made it back didn't brag. They just got to work, raising families, building towns, fixing what was broken. The war didn't make them hard. Life already had. The war just proved it. Some came back with wounds that couldn't be seen, nightmares that kicked harder than any bronc. But even then, they didn't ask for pity. They leaned on silence, on prayer, on long rides with nothing but the wind to talk to. The cowboy code followed them to the battlefield. Things like honor, sacrifice, loyalty, they weren't just words, they were live truths. These men didn't need orders to do what was right. They just needed a reason, and they always found one. Back home, those same men built American life with their calloused hands. They poured foundations, raised barns, ran barbed wire, taught their sons how to stand tall without talking loud. No medals on the wall, but grit in the bones. They say every generation has its trial. For those cowboys in combat boots, their trial came overseas. But they faced it the same way their granddaddies faced the Dust Bowl, with quiet strength and unshakable faith. Their legacy? It ain't in parades or history books. It's in how they lived afterward. Strong backs, soft hearts, hands that could comfort and fight. They didn't chase glory. They carried burdens with grace. And that's what makes a hard man. Not anger, not noise, but purpose. The new frontier, holding the line in a softer world. The old cowboys are harder to find now. You don't see many hitching posts outside stores, and most kids these days think leather comes from a factory, not a hide. But the world still needs men made of rawhide and reason. Trouble is, hard times ain't as easy to come by anymore. See, back then, a man's worth was measured in calluses and character. He didn't tweet about what he was going to do. He just did it. Now we live in a world where folks get medals for showing up and feelings get more airtime than facts. That ain't how cowboys were raised. It used to be if you wanted something, you worked. If it broke, you fixed it. If you fell, you got up. And if your neighbor was in trouble, you saddled up and helped. No contracts, no applause, just decency passed down like an old pair of boots. But these days, everything's padded, air-conditioned, comfortable. And while there's nothing wrong with ease, too much of it softens a man, not just in the hands, but in the heart. Makes him forget that strength comes from struggle, not luxury. Hard men weren't born that way. They were shaped by hardship, the kind that didn't let up just because you were tired. It was cold mornings, busted knuckles, and cattle that didn't care about your schedule. It was raising kids when money was tight and sleep was tighter. Now folks complain when the Wi-Fi is slow or their coffee ain't just right. They forget that comfort is a blessing bought and paid for by people who didn't have any. And those people didn't do it for thanks. They did it so their kids wouldn't have to start from nothing. But here's the catch. Without struggle, we lose something. We lose grit. We lose that inner steel that makes a man stand his ground when it's easier to sit down. We lose the fire that made cowboys more than just ranch hands. They were guardians of what was right. So now the frontier looks different. It ain't wide open plains, it's city streets and online noise. But the battle's the same. It's a fight for integrity, for truth, for backbone in a world that keeps trying to meld it down. And that means the cowboy spirit still matters, maybe more than ever. We need men who shake your hand like they mean it, who teach their kids that yes means yes and no means no, who don't quit when life kicks them square in the teeth. The new frontier don't need more talkers, it needs doers. Folks who ain't afraid to sweat, to speak up, to stand tall when it'd be easier to bow down. The world's full of noise, but what we need now is the quiet strength of those who came before. The kind of man who gets up early, works all day, and never says a word about being tired. The kind of woman who can raise babies, fix fence, and outshoot any man dumb enough to challenge her. That's cowboy toughness. It ain't loud, it ain't pretty, but by God it lasts. Some say cowboys are a dying breed. Maybe they are, but truth don't die, and neither does grit. It just waits for the right folks to pick it back up, dust it off, and ride with it. Because hard times may come again, and when they do, we'll need hard men to carry us through. So if you're tired of the softness, the excuses, the whining, good. That means you're still awake. Maybe you're part of the next wave of hard men. Men who don't wait to be asked, who lead by doing, who live by a code that don't need rewriting. The cowboy ain't gone. He's just quieter now. Working the land, raising a family, holding the line in a world that's trying real hard to blur it. And that line, it ain't drawn in chalk. It's drawn in sweat and sacrifice, and it don't move easy. So stand firm, partner. The hat may be different, but the heart's the same. And when the storm comes, and it always does, be the one who doesn't flinch. Be the one who others look to. Be the one who proves that hard times still make hard men. So maybe you weren't raised on a ranch. Maybe you've never thrown a saddle or swung a hammer. Doesn't matter. What matters is what's inside you. 'Cause deep down, every man's got a little dust and grit waiting to be tested. You don't have to chase storms to prove you're tough. Just face the ones already in front of you. Hard men don't brag. They don't beg. They build, they bear, they believe. And in a world that's forgotten what quiet strength looks like, maybe it's time we remind them. If this message stirred something in you, if it reminded you of your granddad, your old man, or the kind of man you want to be, then ride with us. Hit that like button. Subscribe to Cowboy Chronicles for more old school grit and cowboy wisdom. And don't forget to ring that bell so you never miss the next ride. We ain't just telling stories. We're building a legacy, one lesson at a time. Until next time, partner, stand tall, ride true, and never back down.